fall back on what you know to do right and to yourself. But at the end of the day, that's not where they needed to be. They didn't need to be out in the sea in the ship. They needed to be out in the street proclaiming evermore. Hey, in 3 days, Jesus is getting up out of that tomb. Hey, remember when he said on the cross, in 3 days, he's going to rise again. No, they went back to what they trusted. They went back to the things of the world. Can I tell you that was the devastating blow, I believe, in my own personal opinion, to the cause of Calvary. But 3 days later, all that changed when Jesus walked out of the tomb. The despondency and the despair of those disciples who had their heads hung low and were out fishing again, and those who were hidden in the upper room, when Jesus was in their presence after the third day, life was never the same. Can I tell you, when you're overwhelmed and God just His presence shows up in your very room, He meets you out on the sea, you'll never be the same.
Amen.
Right.
That's right.
Notice what happened here. The trust of a good man's heart. We may be far off from our friends, far off from our families and loved ones. Hear me well now. But God is always near.
Right.
You may be a million miles from everything and everybody, but God is always near. He is simply a word or a prayer away from your need.
Amen.
So many times we buck Him, we fight Him, we raise our fists to heaven, we put our chins out there, we push our chest out, and we blame God. In a sense, we're cursing God for things that happen. Nothing that's happened to you or me has ever surprised Him. He's fully aware of what you're going through, and He's there to lovingly carry you from point to point to point to see you through it. Amen, preacher. I see that not only that, we are friends so far, we're friends, family, loved ones, but God is always near, and that is why we must, that is what builds my trust. And point number one, that's what builds my trust. My friends, my family, and my loved ones are all going to fail me in some way, but Jesus never fails.
Right.
I'll say it again. My friends, my family, and my loved ones will all come up short.
Right.
But Jesus never fails.
Amen.
I want to make a Baptist run 10 laps this afternoon. Amen. God's always going to be there. Just because it's difficult, hard, and sometimes you never even faced something like this before, you feel that you can't handle it, or even that the load is too much for you to bear. Rest assured, right here's 2 Bible verses. Preacher, what you got to help me with that? Here they are. Deuteronomy chapter 31 and verse 6 says, "Be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, He it is that doeth good, He it is that doeth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee."
Right.
When the enemy was coming around the children of Israel, when the enemy was coming around your house, when the enemy is surrounding your heart and your mind and your soul, rest assured, Deuteronomy 31 and 6, He has not failed you. He's not left you. He's never going to leave you alone to fight the battle by yourself. He is your strong tower. Run to Him.
Right. Right.
He's the one.
Right.
Here's another verse. Hebrews 13 and 5 says, "Let your conversation be without covetousness." You're going through something, and you're saying, "God, how come my family can't be like that?" Well, they're not going through anything. How come they're not suffering heartache going on with them? And let's look at it this way. Hey, Lord, I'm a Christian. Why am I going through this? The lost people, I know they're not even suffering like I'm suffering. Do not covet that kind of stuff. God has put you in a place, in a position, that this moment, this time, and this hour, to where you can be a light for Him, and He can help you beyond a shadow of a doubt. Amen, preacher.
Right. Yep.
Let's finish the verse. Do not do that with covetousness. "And be content with such things as you have. For He hath said, I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee."
Right.
That's why David could trust in God. That's why we see the trust of a good man's heart is not based on circumstances, not based on his friends' circumstances, but they are based on his relationship with the faithful God we serve. Amen, preacher.
Right. Yep.
And I'm telling you. Amen, preacher. That's good stuff. Golly. I'm telling experiences. I already touched on this. Thou hast in verse 3. You draw from those experiences because the same God delivered David from all the fleshly things like the lion, the bear, from Saul, from Goliath, and all the other adversarial things he faced, will also take care of him when his heart is overwhelmed. If God can deliver somebody from a lion and a bear, I think he can take care of my heart.
Right.
If God can deliver him from somebody who's out to kill him, Saul and Absalom and all the men that were coming after David, I believe he can take care of my heart when I'm overwhelmed.
Right.
I believe God to do that. I rest on the past experiences. But not only that, I dwell on His faithfulness. Here's the problem that we have. We're so caught up with the lion and the bear and Saul and Absalom and everything else that we went through and what we're literally seeing right in front of us take place. We get so wrapped up in looking down that we never look up and thank God for what He's done in the past. Thank God for what He's done this morning. Thank God for what He did last night. Thank God for what He's going to do tomorrow. We never get to that place because we're so busy dwelling on yesterday.
Right.
But letter B says we need to dwell on His faithfulness. In spite of us, He's still faithful.
Right.
In spite of my circumstances, He's still faithful. Amen. In spite of how I feel, He's still faithful. Preacher, if you don't know what I'm going through, I don't care what it is, He's still faithful.
Right.
I don't care how hard it seems, He's still faithful. It don't look too good, preacher, He's still faithful. You got to get a hold of that. David is saying, God, it's because of what you did yesterday, I'm ever holding on to you more today. That's why I'm trusting in your faithfulness. And you see this in verse number 5. Look with me here. He said, For thou, O God, hast heard my vows. You heard me, God. And then thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. Lineage after lineage of people coming after the fact. He is telling you and I and helping us to know that the trust of a good man's heart is based on past experiences and the faithfulness of the God he serves. Mm-hmm. If it ain't helping nobody out there, and then it may not be getting past this podium, it's helping this preacher today.
Right.
Man, oh man. Number 2, Mike, let's go there. Not only do we see the trust of a good man's heart, but I also see the trial of a good man's faith. Look with me, verses 3 through 5. 3 through 5. I also want you to notice the phrase in verse number 2 as you go there. Look with me here. It says in verse number 2, from the end of the earth. Notice that little phrase from the end of the end of the earth. That's not a phrase so much about David talking about geographically where he's separated from God. It's not talking about God's in Israel and I'm down here in Egypt. That's not what he's focusing on geographically. What he's talking about there is the spiritual side of his heart. Look at me in the verse. Let's look at it in the context. Don't take step commentary for it. Here it is. He said, For from the end of the earth will I cry unto thee when my heart is overwhelmed. That's a spiritual matter. That's not a proximity matter. That's a spiritual matter. David is overrun by whatever the circumstance is that he's facing right here in 61. And I love the fact that it's not itemized to what's going on. That means no matter what you're facing, hey, this chapter's for you. No matter what you're going through, this chapter's for you. It doesn't give an intimate detail about what David is facing, but whatever it is, God's able. And whatever you're going through, God is still able.
Right.
Yep. I want you to see a couple more things. Notice that phrase is about not the phrase so much about where David is geographically, but where he is spiritually. And I fully believe that many of us can relate to that. You've sat in church. You've seen people raise their hand. You've heard people say amen. You've heard people singing their hearts out the Song of Zion, and you're a million miles from everywhere. You can't feel God. You don't even know He's in this room. You don't know nothing about nothing because you are overwhelmed of your heart, and until you're willing to surrender your heart to God, you'll never feel His presence again.
Right.
Preacher, what are you talking about? I'm just being honest with you. You harden your heart before God. How in the world can you get there? The songs have been sung for your glory. The preaching's been preached for your glory to help you. And the things and the testimonies and the hands and everything that's happened is to be a help to you this morning and yesterday and last week and last Sunday and all the other services. And you sit here, you fold your arms, you buck yourself, you fight against God, and you wonder why you don't feel it. It's not because you're not here. It's because where you are spiritually is the problem.
Right.
Amen, preacher. Yep. He's saying right here in the verse, I'm not reading anything crazy. Verse 2, from the end of the earth. It's not geographically, it's spiritually where his heart is. can come here and go through every routine of service. You can raise your hand and say amen with the best of them. You can get up here and preach and your heart's still be a million miles from God.
Yeah.
Let's finish this down. Point number 2. He says, and point number 2, the trial of a good man's faith. That means also letter A. The enemy doesn't play fair. The enemy, your enemy, my enemy, does not play fair. He hits you where it hurts the most.
Right.
He hits you where it hurts the most.
Right.
Family, finances are the big 2 F words. If he can get into those 2 areas of your life, that's where it's going to affect you the most, and that's where he's going to attack. That's what he's going to go after, and that's what he's going to chase after, because as soon as you respond to him in that way, he knows he's got a foothold on you, and he's coming not only by himself, but he's bringing some hairy ants with him, and they're all going to fight against you to try to kill your joy. Amen, preacher.
Right.
He wants to get in this area. He attacks where it hurts the most. Every single one of them every single one of us know what it means to suffer and hurt with our family and friends. And then we also know what it means to hurt and suffer financially. That's where the enemy of our souls starts out. If you don't believe me, go to the book of Job. What was the first thing he took care of? Not only did he afflict Job with his ailments, but he affected his family and his finances.
Right.
What did Job do? He didn't get out there in the sackcloth and ashes, and he didn't robe himself in the best robe he had. He didn't walk out there with a scroll under his arm, meaning the Bible. He didn't sit there and look up to heaven and say, God, do you know who I am? No, he did not. He went out to that sackcloth and ashes. He took everything off. It was just him and God there at that moment, that hour. He said, God, you've been so good to me before. You blessed this way, and I'll take it now. And even if you take it all away, I'm still going to bless your day. That's where you and I got to get. We get to the point of this life, we think we're entitled to something. You think you owe something from God. You know he hasn't owed you anything other than salvation. Everything else you get on his behalf is nothing but a blessing. And if you got it, bless his name for it. Amen?
Right.
Telling you, enemy's out to get you where it hurts the most. Here's what Billy Graham said. Here, now you think we might say the patriarch of our day. Billy Graham said these words: "The Christian life is not a constant high." So Billy Graham. Billy Graham said, I too have had moments of discouragement. Billy Graham. You know why he can say that? Because he's just like you and I. He's been through it, you're going through it, I'm going through it, he's been through it. Here's what else he said. He said, I too have gone to God with tears in my eyes and said, oh God, forgive me. He said, and if that didn't work, he said, oh God, help me. Billy Graham crying to God. We might say the patriarch of our day, the Christian of Christians in our time and era that we live in. This very man that we put on a pedestal as a man might be, he's crying out to God because it's not always joy, peace, and happiness. It's not always up on top of the mountain. Sometimes it's, oh God, forgive me. And if God doesn't do that, you should say, oh God, please help me.
Right.
And all of us need both of them. The great Billy Graham's let us know that it rains on the just and the unjust just alike. Amen, preacher. Letter B also said the enemy wants us to worry. I found this quote about worrying. Here's what it says. Worrying is worshiping the problem. Let that sit just for a moment. Worrying is worshiping the problem. I didn't do the math, but I'm just going to go out on a limb, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe there's at least 20 times I read in the Bible where the Bible verse starts out, fret not. Meaning, don't you worry about it. But worrying is worshiping the problem. Here's the remainder of that text. Worrying is worshiping the problem, but prayer is surrendering your problem to God. If all you do is look at the problem and you're worrying over that problem, then you're worshiping the problem more than you are the problem fixer.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not saying that right. Worrying is worshiping the problem. Prayer is surrendering your problem to God.
Right.
Listen, His yoke is easier to carry than yours. Why don't you just take yours off and give it to Him? He said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. That simply means if this is so heavy and it's so weighing me down, if I can get it off my neck and shoulders and give it to Him, the only outcome to that is not only am Number 3, Mark, let's go there. Whew, man, that's bad as a shot, I think, today. Trust of God's, the trust of a good man's heart, the trial of a good man's faith. Number 3, the triumph of a good man's faith. 6 through 8, the realization of an all-sufficient God. That's what's going to make you triumph. That's what's going to get you through it all. The realization of an all-sufficient God. I told you already, I believe the text is left void of what David was going through because it's different for everybody in this room. And whatever you're getting overwhelmed by, God can meet you in your specific need. Amen. Right. That's why I put down for letter A, He is an all-sufficient God. Patty's in the back on this side. She's going through something different than Becky is in the front over here. Betty's going through something different than Mike is back there. But can I tell you, point A, B, C, and D, He's all-sufficient, can meet everybody's needs at all one time, and everybody's request, whatever you got going on. The great God of heaven, look at what He's doing. He is the triumphing over God, over good man's faith. What is He doing? He's realizing that God can meet his need.
Right.
He can meet yours too.
Right.
He can meet yours too. Letter B, I also see that the reliance is on God alone. Nowhere in this 8 verses does he say, I wish that my brethren would come alongside of me. Nowhere in his 8 verses does he say, oh, I wish I had help from so-and-so. Nowhere does he say, I've strengthened myself to get through this. No, it's not in the text. His entire cry is unto God. Hear my cry, O God. Verse 1. He's realizing not only this, that God is all-sufficient, but he also is relying on God alone to get him through it. His reliance is not in his ability, it's not in his wallet, it's not in his past experiences, it's not in his presence in church this morning, it's in his power this morning is going to get through it.
Right.
And that's how you're going to get through it.
Yep. Yep.
He's calling on God alone. The realization that God is all-sufficient can meet all of our needs. The reliance that God alone can do it all. And then I see letter C, the resting in God, in the God of his salvation. Let me close it with this. I wrote them down this way. I may be. I'm going to give you some things to go with it. I may be in church this morning, but I'm struggling. I may belong to God this morning as a child of God, but I'm struggling. I maybe have sung a good song during the choir time, but I'm struggling. I may be the only one saved in my household, but I'm struggling. Here's what I wrote down. Now, those are some free things for you, but I may be shaken, but God can calm me down.
Yep.
As a diabetic, I told you this story before, the first time I've ever had, whatever that's called, I don't know if I'm high or low, I don't know how it works, but whatever it is, I was having uncontrollable shakes. As I walk through the house, my mind is running crazy. What in the world is wrong with me? And I start to think and listen to what the doctor was just telling me hours before. And I knew that if I could get to the refrigerator and get me a big, heavy drink of orange juice, that would take care and calm all this that I'm struggling with on the outside. But before I made it to the refrigerator, which is no longer than a walk from here to that window, I said, Dear God, I'm struggling with this. Help me.
Right.
I never waited till I got over there to the refrigerator. I never waited till the orange juice started to work on the inside. I never waited for Rhonda to wake up and say, here, take this. I never did that. I went right to the source of my help and said, Dear God, help me. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I'm shaking. I don't know why I can't stop it. But dear God, help me this evening in the middle of the night. Help